I was standing in my kitchen, holding the bank statement that showed a zero balance where $45,000 should have been. When Megan looked me straight in the eye and said, "You're old, George. The boys will get scholarships anyway. This is an investment in my future." The coffee mug in my hand didn't even tremble. I set it down carefully, walked to my study, and pulled out the original trust documents. 20 minutes later, I had made 3 phone calls. The first was to my lawyer. The second was to the bank's fraud department. The third was to the local newspaper's business section. Megan had no idea that her grand opening was about to become her closing ceremony. But let me take you back to that morning, when everything still seemed perfect in my small San Diego kitchen. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air as I watched my twin grandsons, Jake and Tommy, both 16, arguing over who got the last piece of my famous blueberry pancakes. Their laughter echoed through the house that had been quiet for too long since my Martha passed 3 years ago. Doug, my son, sat across from them with that proud father smile I remembered wearing when he was their age. "Grandpa George," Jake said, syrup dripping from his fork, "Coach Miller says if I keep improving my SAT scores, I might get a partial scholarship to UC San Diego." "That's my boy," I said, ruffling his hair. "But you know what? Even with a scholarship, college is expensive. Your grandmother and I, we set something aside for both of you boys." Tommy's eyes lit up. "Really? How much?" "Enough for 4 years each, plus some extra for books and living expenses. $45,000, earning interest since you were born." Doug whistled low. "Dad, you never told us it was that much. Your mother and I wanted it to be a surprise. We figured by the time you boys graduated high school, it would be closer to $60,000 with the compound interest." Megan walked in then, her designer heels clicking on the kitchen tile. Even at 9 in the morning, she was dressed like she was heading to a board meeting instead of dropping the boys at school. Her perfume was too strong, too expensive. Everything about her always felt like she was trying to prove something. "Morning, George," she said, kissing my cheek with lips that felt cold despite her warm smile. "The boys were just telling me about college plans." "Yes, well, they don't need to worry about the money part. I've got that covered." Something flickered in Megan's eyes, but she smiled wider. "That's so generous of you. Actually, there's something I wanted to discuss with you about the college fund." My stomach should have clenched right then, should have seen the warning signs. But I was too busy watching my grandsons finish their breakfast, thinking about how proud Martha would have been of the men they were becoming. "Of course," I said. "What's on your mind?" "Well, I've been looking at investment opportunities, and I think we could grow that money faster than it's sitting in a regular savings account." Doug nodded enthusiastically. "Megan's got a real head for business, Dad. She's been researching this boutique idea for months." "A boutique?" I asked. "High-end women's fashion," Megan said, her voice getting animated. "There's this perfect spot in La Jolla, right in the shopping district. The demographics are ideal. Wealthy women who don't mind spending money on quality clothes." "Sounds interesting," I said carefully. "But the boys' college fund isn't really investment money. It's security money." "But think about it, George," Megan continued, moving closer to the table. "If the boutique takes off like I know it will, we could triple that money in just 2 years. The boys would have enough for graduate school too." I felt that first small chill then, the way you feel when a cloud passes over the sun. "The fund is specifically for college tuition and expenses." That was Martha's wish. "Martha would want what's best for her grandsons," Megan said, her voice taking on a slight edge. "And what's best is growing their money, not letting it sit there doing nothing." Doug reached over and squeezed my shoulder. "Dad, maybe we should at least hear her out. Megan's been studying the market, the location, everything. She's even got investors lined up. Then why does she need the boys' college money?" The question hung in the air for a moment too long. Megan's smile faltered, just for a second, before snapping back into place. "It's not that I need it," she said. "It's that this is such a good opportunity. I want the boys to benefit from it. As co-signer on the account, I have the authority to make investment decisions that benefit them." That word, cosigner, hit me like a punch to the gut. I had added her name to the account when she and Doug married, thinking it would make things easier if something happened to me. A decision made with trust and love, now twisted into something else entirely. Let me think about it, I said, but Megan was already shaking her head. George, I appreciate that you want to think it through, but the opportunity won't wait. I need to move on this by Friday, or we lose the location. Friday? That's 3 days away. Sometimes the best opportunities come with tight timelines, she said. That's just business. I looked at Doug, expecting him to see what I was seeing, the pressure, the manipulation. Instead, he was nodding along like this all made perfect sense. Maybe Mom's right, Dad. Maybe it's time to be a little more aggressive with the money. The boys had finished eating and were gathering their backpacks, preparing to leave for school. Jake came over and hugged me goodbye. Thanks for saving up for us, Grandpa. You're the best. Tommy followed suit. Yeah, we're really lucky to have you. They left with Megan and Doug, their voices fading as they walked to the car. I stood in my kitchen, looking at the dirty dishes and feeling like something precious had just walked out the door with them. That was Tuesday morning. By Thursday, I still hadn't given Megan an answer. She had called twice, each time with increasing urgency about the boutique opportunity. Doug had stopped by Wednesday evening to talk sense into me. As he put it, Friday morning, I drove to the bank to make the deposit from my Navy pension check. I always liked to do my banking in person, old habits from a generation that trusted face-to-face transactions more than computers. Good morning, Mr. Pratt. Sandra, my usual teller, greeted me. Making a deposit today? Yes, and I'd like to check the balance on the college fund account too, please. She typed for a moment, then frowned at her screen. I'm showing a zero balance on that account, Mr. Pratt. The words didn't make sense at first. Zero balance? That can't be right. There should be $45,000 plus interest. Sandra checked again, her frown deepening. I'm showing a withdrawal of the full amount on Wednesday. $47,312. Withdrawn by Megan Pratt. Wednesday, the day after our kitchen conversation. The day she had called me twice about the urgent timeline. I drove home in a daze, my hands steady on the wheel but my mind reeling. When I pulled into my driveway, Megan's car was already there. She was sitting on my front porch, looking radiant in a new outfit that probably cost more than some people made in a week. George, she called out, waving enthusiastically. I have the most wonderful news. I walked up the steps slowly, my keys feeling heavy in my hand. I got the boutique location. The paperwork is all signed, and we can start renovations next week. Isn't that exciting? You took the money. Her smile never wavered. I invested the money. For the boys' future. Without asking me. George, we talked about this. The timeline was tight, and I had to act fast. You'll thank me when the boutique starts turning a profit. I stood there, looking at this woman who had married my son, who lived in my old family home, who I had welcomed into my life with open arms. The woman who had just stolen $47,000 from my grandsons. What if the boutique fails? For the first time, her confidence cracked. It won't fail. But what if it does? It won't, she repeated, but her voice was sharper now. Megan, that money wasn't mine to gamble with. It was Martha's legacy to her grandsons. It was their security, their future. She stood up then, her composure finally slipping. Your future, George? You're 70 years old. You won't even be around to see them graduate college. The boys are smart. They'll get scholarships anyway. This boutique, this is an investment in my future, in Doug's future, in the life we're trying to build. The words hit me like physical blows, each one calculated, designed to wound. I worked 32 years in the Navy to save that money. Martha clipped coupons and bought store-brand groceries so we could put money aside each month. That wasn't just money, Megan. That was sacrifice. And now that sacrifice is going to pay off even bigger, she said, her salesperson smile returning. When the boutique is successful, the boys will have even more money for college. And if it's not successful? She shrugged. Then we'll figure something else out. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. Someone who could take a lifetime of careful saving, a widow's trust, a grandfather's love for his grandsons, and turn it into gambling chips for her own dreams. I want the money back in the account by Monday. Megan laughed, actually laughed. George, that's not how investments work. The money is already being put to use. The lease is signed, the contractors are hired. You can't just change your mind. I never gave you permission to take the money in the first place. I'm a co-signer on the account. I had every legal right to make that withdrawal. Legal right, not moral right, not family right, legal right. Monday, Megan. The money back in the account by Monday. Her facade finally dropped completely. Or what? You'll call the police? You'll sue your own family? Face it, George, you're old, you're alone, and nobody's going to believe you over us. Doug and I will tell everyone you're getting senile, that you don't remember agreeing to the investment. Who do you think they'll believe? The successful young couple or the old man living by himself? She walked down the steps, then turned back with a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. Don't worry, George. In a year or two, when the boutique is thriving, you'll be thanking me for being brave enough to take the risk you were too scared to take. I watched her drive away, then went inside and sat in my living room for a long time. On the mantel, Martha's picture smiled at me from our wedding day, 48 years ago. Next to it, a photo of the twins at their last birthday, grinning as they blew out their candles. I looked at those photos and remembered the envelope Martha had left me when she died. Inside, along with her jewelry and important papers, was a handwritten note. George, make sure the boys have every opportunity we never had. That money represents every overtime shift you worked, every vacation we didn't take, every luxury we passed up. It's their future. This was the same woman who had sewn patches on our son's jeans instead of buying new ones, who had made birthday cakes from scratch because bakery cakes were too expensive, who had worked part-time at the grocery store even after Doug was born because every extra dollar went into savings. I thought about Doug, my boy who had watched his mother scrimp and save, who knew exactly what that money represented. The same Doug who had sat in my kitchen and nodded along while his wife planned to steal from his own children. I thought about the 17 years since the twins were born. 17 years of depositing money into that account every month without fail. Even when the furnace broke and we had to choose between fixing it and making the deposit, we fixed it with credit cards and made the deposit anyway. Even when Martha got sick and the medical bills piled up, we found a way to keep saving for the boys. $2,647 every year. Exactly $220.58 every month for 204 months. I had the statements in my filing cabinet, every deposit recorded in Martha's careful handwriting until she got too sick to keep the books. Then in my own Messier script. Not once had we missed a payment. Not once had we borrowed from that fund, even when we desperately needed the money for ourselves. And now it was gone. Spent on lease deposits and contractors and Megan's dream of playing businesswoman with other people's money. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. Something else happened instead, something colder and more focused. I went to my study and pulled out the original trust documents, the ones my lawyer had drawn up when the boys were born. The papers that clearly stated the money was designated for educational purposes only, with specific provisions for how it could and could not be used. Then I pulled out the account statements, all 204 of them, showing every deposit, every bit of accumulated interest. Martha had saved every single one, organized by year in a manila folder labeled Boy's Future, in her careful cursive. I spread the documents on my desk and began to make phone calls. The first call was to James Morrison, my lawyer. I had known Jim since we served together in the Pacific Fleet 35 years ago. He had handled Martha's will and had drawn up the college fund paperwork. Jim, it's George Pratt. I need to see you today. It's urgent. What's going on, George? Someone stole the boys' college money. $47,312. And I want it back. The second call was to the bank's fraud department. Sandra, my teller, transferred me to her supervisor when I explained the situation. Mr. Pratt, while Mrs. Pratt was listed as a cosigner, the withdrawal does appear to violate the stated purpose of the trust account. We'll need to file a formal complaint and begin an investigation. The third call was to Doug's work number. Dad. His voice was cautious, like he already knew why I was calling. Your wife stole from your children, Doug. $47,000. I want it back in the account by Monday, or I'm pressing charges. Silence on the other end. Then, Dad, it's not stealing. She's investing it. In her business. For the boys' benefit. Doug, do you hear yourself? She took money that belonged to your sons and spent it on herself. That's theft. Dad, please, don't make this bigger than it needs to be. Your mother died knowing that money would send her grandsons to college. How is this not as big as it needs to be? More silence. Then, quietly, what do you want us to do? Return the money. All of it. By Monday. Dad, we can't. The lease is signed. The deposits are paid. The money is already spent. Then your wife had better figure out how to unspend it. I hung up before he could respond. By 5 o'clock that evening, I had filed fraud complaints with both the bank and the police. I had signed papers authorizing Jim Morrison to begin restitution proceedings. I had documented every deposit, every interest payment, every penny that had gone into that account over 17 years. My phone started ringing around 6. First Doug, then Megan, then Doug again. I didn't answer. I was busy making copies of documents and organizing my evidence. Saturday morning, Doug showed up at my door with Megan. She looked different, less polished, more desperate. George, please, she said before I could even invite them in. You're being unreasonable. The boutique is going to be successful. The boys will get their money back, probably doubled. When? What? When will they get their money back? Give me a date. She fumbled for words. Well, businesses take time to become profitable. How much time? A year? 5 years? What if they need college money in 2 years when they graduate? They can get student loans. Everyone does. I looked at my son, standing behind his wife with his shoulders slumped like a man who had already lost a fight he hadn't known he was in. Doug, do you remember when you wanted to go to engineering school but couldn't afford it? Do you remember working construction for 3 years to save up for tuition? He wouldn't meet my eyes. That was different. How was it different? We didn't have money then. We had money. We chose not to spend it on your education because we wanted to make sure there was something left for the grandchildren. Your mother and I went without so they wouldn't have to. Dad, please, don't do this to our family. I'm not doing anything to our family. Your wife did this when she stole from her own children. Megan's composure finally cracked completely. Fine. You want to know the truth? The truth is you're old, George. You're 70 years old, and you're not going to live forever. Those boys need someone who's going to be around to help them, not some old man who's going to die before they even finish high school. The cruelty of it took my breath away. Not just the words, but the calculated nature of them. She had thought about this, planned what she would say to hurt me the most. Get out of my house. George, Doug started. Both of you, get out. After they left, I sat in my living room and thought about Martha. How she would have handled this situation. She was always the peacemaker in the family, the one who smoothed over conflicts and found compromises. But there was no compromise here. There was theft and betrayal and a daughter-in-law who thought my age made me weak and disposable. I thought about what Martha would say, and I knew exactly what she would tell me. George Pratt, you protect those boys' future. You fight for them like you'd fight for any member of your family under attack. Monday morning, I was at Jim Morrison's office when he opened at 8 a.m. The police report is filed, I told him. The bank investigation is underway. What's our next step? Jim spread the documents across his conference table. We file for immediate restitution. The trust documents are ironclad. The money was designated for educational purposes only. Using it for a business investment is a clear violation of the trust terms. How long will it take? Given the documentation and the fact that we can trace exactly where the money went, probably 90 days for a judgment. Maybe less. And then what? Then we collect. If she can't pay immediately, we can put liens on property, garnish wages, seize business assets. The boutique itself could be liquidated to satisfy the judgment. I thought about Megan's confidence, her certainty that she could get away with this because I was just a lonely old man with no real power. Jim, I want you to do something else for me. I want you to file papers to have me removed as a cosigner on any other accounts. And I want Megan's name removed from any accounts that have my name on them. That's smart. What else? I want to set up a new trust for the boys. Something she can't touch, even if something happens to me. Consider it done. On Wednesday, the boutique had its grand opening. I knew because Megan had sent me an invitation, probably as some sort of twisted gesture of reconciliation. The invitation was professionally printed on expensive cardstock, with gold lettering and embossed edges. It must have cost a fortune, money that had come from my grandson's college fund. I put on my best suit, the navy dress blues I had worn to Martha's funeral, and drove to La Jolla. The boutique was in a prime location, just like Megan had said. Big windows facing the street, expensive lighting, racks of clothes that probably cost more than most people's mortgage payments. There was a small crowd gathered outside, mostly women with the kind of money that Megan was hoping to attract. I parked across the street and watched for a while. Doug was there, looking uncomfortable in an expensive suit I had never seen before. The boys were there too, dressed up and smiling as they helped hand out promotional materials. They looked proud of their stepmother, happy to be part of her big day. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out the folder I had prepared. Inside were copies of every bank statement showing the deposits into the college fund, copies of the trust documents, copies of the police report, and copies of the withdrawal records showing exactly when and how Megan had taken the money. At the top of the stack was a single sheet of paper with a handwritten note. This boutique was opened with money stolen from Jake and Tommy Pratt's college fund. $47,312 taken without permission on Wednesday, November 8th. The police report number is below if you'd like to verify this information. I waited until the crowd was at its thickest. Then I walked across the street. Doug saw me coming and his face went pale. Megan noticed his expression and turned to see what he was looking at. "George," she said, her voice bright and false. "I'm so surprised to see you here. I thought I should support family," I said calmly. "Congratulations on your new business." She looked confused but pleased. "Thank you. Would you like to come inside and see what we've done with the space?" "Actually, I have something for Doug first." I handed him the folder. He opened it, saw the contents, and his face went from pale to gray. "Dad, what is this?" "Just some paperwork I thought you should have." The crowd around us was still chatting and laughing, but a few people had started to notice the tension. Doug was flipping through the pages, his expression getting more horrified with each document. "George," Megan said, her voice lower now, "this isn't the time or place." "Actually, I think this is exactly the time and place," I said, raising my voice just enough that people nearby could hear. "After all, these are the investors who should know where their money is really going." A woman in an expensive dress leaned closer. "What's going on?" I turned to her with a smile. "I'm George Pratt, and I wanted to congratulate my daughter-in-law on opening this boutique with the $47,000 she stole from her stepson's college fund." The reaction was immediate. Conversations stopped. People turned to stare. Someone gasped. "That's not true," Megan said quickly, but her voice was shaking. "George is. He's been having some memory problems." "No memory problems," I said calmly. "Just documentation problems. Would you like to see the bank records? They show every deposit my wife and I made over 17 years, and they show exactly when the money was withdrawn. 3 days after I specifically told her not to touch it." Doug was still staring at the paperwork. "Dad, please." "Please what, son? Please let your wife steal from your children. Please pretend this is okay." More people were gathering now, drawn by the drama. I could see phones being pulled out, probably to record the confrontation. "The police report is right there in the folder," I told the crowd. "Case number 7749281. Feel free to verify it." Megan made one last desperate attempt to control the situation. "Everyone, please. This is a family matter that should be discussed privately. You made it a public matter when you used stolen money to open a public business, I replied. These people have a right to know they're supporting a thief. That word, thief, hung in the air like a bomb. Several people in the crowd stepped back. Others started whispering. I could see potential customers looking at the boutique with new eyes, calculating whether they wanted to be associated with this scandal. Boys? I called to my grandsons, who had been watching the whole scene in confused horror. Jake, Tommy, come here. They approached reluctantly, clearly not understanding what was happening. I want you to know that every month for 17 years, your grandmother and I put money aside for your college education. $220.58 every month, without fail. We went without things we wanted so you could have opportunities we never had. The boys looked stricken. Grandpa, what? That money is gone. Your stepmother took it to open this store. $47,312. Your entire college fund. Jake's mouth fell open. Tommy started to cry. But don't worry, I continued, looking directly at Megan. I'm going to get every penny back, with interest. And when I do, it's going into a trust that no one can touch except you boys, when you're ready for college. I turned back to the crowd. Thank you all for coming. I hope you make informed decisions about where you spend your money. I walked back to my car, leaving chaos behind me. Through my rearview mirror, I could see people leaving, conversations breaking up, the festive atmosphere completely destroyed. Doug was trying to talk to people, Megan was arguing with him, and the boys were standing there looking lost and betrayed. The local newspaper ran a story about it 3 days later. Not a big story, just a small piece in the business section about the boutique's controversial opening and the family dispute over a college fund. But it was enough. In a community like La Jolla, word travels fast, and reputation is everything. The boutique struggled from the beginning. Customers stayed away, whether out of ethical concerns or simply because they didn't want to be associated with the scandal. Megan tried to salvage things by offering steep discounts, but that just made her look more desperate. 6 weeks after the grand opening, Jim Morrison called me with good news. We got the judgment, he said. Full restitution plus interest and court costs. $53,407 total. How long does she have to pay? 30 days or we start seizing assets. Megan tried to fight it, of course. She hired her own lawyer, claimed the trust documents were invalid, argued that she had acted in good faith. But the evidence was overwhelming. Every deposit was documented, every withdrawal was traced, every dollar was accounted for. When the 30 days were up and she still hadn't paid, the sheriff showed up at the boutique with a seizure order. I wasn't there to see it, but Doug called me that night, sobbing. Dad, they took everything. The inventory, the fixtures, even the cash register. The boutique is finished. What about the money? The liquidation should cover most of what she owes you. Maybe all of it. And Megan? Silence. Then, she's been staying with her sister. She filed for divorce yesterday. I should have felt vindicated, satisfied, triumphant. Instead, I felt tired and sad for my grandsons, who had watched their family implode over something that should have been their security. Dad, Doug continued, I know I should have stood up to her. I know I should have protected the boys' money. I'm sorry. Doug, you're my son. I love you, but you made a choice to support your wife over your children. That's something you'll have to live with. Is there any way we can fix this? The boys' college fund will be restored. As for the rest of it, that's up to you. 3 months later, I met with Jake and Tommy at their new apartment. Doug had moved out of the family house. He couldn't afford the mortgage without Megan's income, and was renting a small 2-bedroom place where the boys could stay on weekends. Grandpa, Jake said, we want you to know we never asked for any of this. I know you didn't. And we're sorry about what Megan said to you, about you being old and the other stuff. Tommy nodded. That was really mean. I looked at these 2 young men, 17 years old now, on the verge of graduation and college. They looked older than they had 6 months ago. More serious, less trusting. Boys, I want you to understand something. What happened wasn't about money. Not really. It was about respect. About keeping promises. About protecting the people you love. We understand, Jake said. Your grandmother made me promise to make sure you had every opportunity she and I never had. That promise is more important to me than family peace or avoiding conflict. Some things are worth fighting for. I handed them each an envelope. Inside was a letter from the trust company, confirming that $53,407 had been deposited into new college fund accounts in their names. Accounts that only they could access when they turned 18. This isn't the same money, I explained. That money is gone forever. This is new money, from the liquidation of the boutique and from my own savings. But it represents the same thing, your future. Tommy was crying again, but these were different tears. Grandpa, you didn't have to. Yes, I did, because that's what family does. Real family. They protect each other. 6 months after that, I ran into Megan at the grocery store. She looked different, older, tired, wearing clothes that came from department stores instead of boutiques. She was working there, I realized, wearing a name tag and pushing a cart full of items to restock the shelves. Hello, George, she said quietly. Megan. We stood there for a moment, two people whose lives had been forever changed by a single act of betrayal. How are the boys? She asked. They're good. Both got into UC San Diego. Full scholarships, actually, plus they have the college fund for expenses. She nodded. That's good. I'm glad. Are you? She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something I hadn't expected, genuine remorse. I know you won't believe this, but I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought the boutique would work, that I could pay the money back with profits, that everyone would benefit. But you didn't ask. You didn't get permission. You just took it. I know I was wrong. I've lost everything, George. My marriage, my home, my business, the respect of my stepsons. I know that doesn't make up for what I did, but I want you to know I'm sorry. I looked at this woman who had caused so much pain, who had stolen from children, who had nearly destroyed my relationship with my son and grandsons. Part of me wanted to walk away, to let her suffer the consequences of her choices without forgiveness. But I thought about Martha and what she would want me to do. Megan, I hope you learned something from this. I hope you understand now that other people's trust isn't something you gamble with. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I do understand. I understand a lot of things now that I didn't before. I walked away without saying anything else. Not forgiveness, but not cruelty either. Just acknowledgement that we were both human beings who had been hurt by the choices she made. A year later, I was at Jake and Tommy's high school graduation. Doug was there with his new girlfriend, a nice woman named Lisa who taught elementary school and drove a 10-year-old Honda. She seemed kind and genuine, nothing like Megan. After the ceremony, Jake found me in the crowd. Grandpa, I got the financial aid letter from UC San Diego. Between my scholarship and the college fund, I won't need any student loans. That's wonderful. I want to study engineering, like Dad wanted to. I smiled. Your grandmother would be so proud. Tommy came over with his diploma, grinning from ear to ear. Grandpa, guess what? I got accepted to the Navy Academy. Full scholarship, and they'll pay me a salary while I'm there. My heart swelled with pride. The Navy Academy? Tommy, that's incredible. I want to be like you, Grandpa. I want to serve my country. Later that evening, after the parties and celebrations were over, I sat in my living room looking at Martha's picture. The house was quiet, but it didn't feel empty. It felt full of possibility, full of the future that these boys would build with the opportunities we had given them. I thought about the woman who had tried to steal that future, who had seen their college fund as nothing more than investment capital for her dreams. She had been wrong about so many things, but she had been especially wrong about one thing. She had underestimated what an old man would do to protect his family. The money was never really about the money. It was about promises kept, about sacrifices honored, about ensuring that two boys would have chances their grandparents never had. It was about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard, even when it costs you something precious. As I turned off the lights and headed to bed, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Not because I had won, but because I had kept my promise. To Martha, to the boys, and to the values we had raised our family on. Some battles are worth fighting, no matter what they cost. Some promises are worth keeping, no matter who tries to break them. And some old men are stronger than people think, especially when they're protecting the people they love. The boys would go to college debt-free. They would have opportunities Martha and I could only dream of. They would build lives and families of their own, and maybe someday they would understand the true value of the sacrifice we made for them. That was worth everything. That was worth fighting for. That was the real victory. If you liked this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions in the comments below. Your support helps us create more content like this.